After burning up a bunch of charcoal the other day making that skillet, I thought it would be a good opportunity to actually talk about making charcoal. Now, right up front, I should mention that I don't make a lot of charcoal because it is very time consuming and the yield for the way that I have been doing it isn't all that great. So it's not a real efficient use of my time to make charcoal the way that I do, but it's still kind of fun. It uses up some wood that would otherwise go to waste. And hopefully one of these days I'll come up with a better system. The outer barrel has some vent holes drilled in the bottom and a little window so you can take a peek in there and see what the fire conditions are between the two barrels. It then has a layer of sand in the bottom that is used to block the vents on the inner barrel. But during the main burn, the inner barrel has to get air, so it's supported by some removable steel bars that we'll take out at the end of the burn. The much smaller inner barrel has holes perforated in the bottom of it, and that's what will be sealed up by that sand and is supported by the bars on the inside so air can get to these holes. This system of charcoal manufacture is not my invention by any means. I was first introduced to this on a YouTube video by Stark Raven Studios, and I will link to that video up here so you can watch my original inspiration. At this point, it's just a matter of loading that inner barrel with the materials that you're going to use to make charcoal. Just about any wood will work, although I would avoid painted woods or pressure-treated lumber because you have no idea what those things might off-gas when you're actually burning the charcoal later. But the more consistent you are in any given individual burn, the better your results would be. What I mean by that is if you have a mixture of hardwoods and softwoods, burn just the softwoods in one burn, burn just the hardwoods in another burn. If you mix the pine and the oak, pine will all burn up before you have completely converted the oak into charcoal. And then you're just wasting the pine. But if you burn them separately, you can get a good batch of pine charcoal and a good batch of oak charcoal, and both are useful. And I'm not implying that pine and oak are the only things you can use. Those are just the more common things that I have around here. For me, I trim wood just right here on the property. We have to do a lot of fire mitigation work, so we have a lot of small branches and things like that. And anything in the 1.5-inch diameter to 2, maybe even 3 inches makes good charcoal. Although as it gets up more to 3 inches, I tend to save that for firewood. But you can make charcoal out of cordwood. You can make it out of the cut branches or saplings. You can even use construction waste. It's all usable material for making charcoal. Now you can probably make charcoal out of old pallets if you want to, but the wood is kind of thin and it's not going to make the biggest, longest lasting charcoal. And if you leave the nails in, those are built-in clinkers that are going to mess with your fire. So it's better to either pull the nails or discard those sections of wood that have nails. But it is wood and it would work. If the materials you have are long and straight, you can put those long pieces in there and then break them up after they turn to charcoal. You just break them by hand at that point. You don't have to use a saw. If they're really bent and twisted pieces of wood, it's probably better to cut them into shorter lengths to start with, just to make it easier to pack as much material as you possibly can into that inner barrel. Now the goal is to get as much of that into this inner barrel as possible. So try to do a neat job, be a little bit methodical, fill in all the gaps. Even if you fill it with smaller stuff that's going to burn up, it'll help fuel the process. And finally, you want to build a little campfire on the top of the whole thing. And this is how we'll get it going. As this burns, this actually draws the air downward through the inner barrel, and then the draft comes up between the barrels, and eventually there'll be a lid on this. But this has to burn down to level with the outer barrel before we can put the lid on it. Now, because we live in a wildfire area where we are, I can't do this if the conditions are hot and dry. Last year, starting in April, we were under an outdoor fire ban all the way into October sometime. So there was really never a good chance to burn charcoal unless I had thought about it in the winter, and I didn't think about it then. So this isn't something I can do all the time. It's also something I can't leave unattended. So I'm going to find some outdoor chores to do right around here while this burns. Well, it's been about 30 minutes and the level of this is down far enough that I can put the lid on the barrel. I've got a hole cut in it. And that lines up with a stovepipe. Now this lid's got some open holes in it. It actually had plastic plugs in it when I got it, so they've long since melted out. I just stick a couple of bricks over the top of those. And at this point, we're probably looking at 2 to 3 hours. It just depends on what species of wood you've got in there, hardwood versus softwood, how dry it is, how well packed you have the barrel. All of those things play into it. So you got to watch it, and I'll show you what to look for when we get to that point. Now when you first close this up, if you look through the little window at the bottom of the big barrel, you can't see any glow in the holes through the small barrel. So there's no fire down there. It's all up top. It has to work its way down. After a couple hours, I can see some glow in those holes. It started smoking more, probably because the wood on the bottom is a little bit greener and it just has more volatiles to cook off. But with that glow there, I'm close to being finished, and when this smoke clears up completely, I think that's a good sign that I'm done. I haven't done this in quite a while, so I might be a little off on my memory, but one way or the other, I think we're really close to the time to shut off all the air to this, and we'll show you what that looks like as soon as we get to that point. Now at this stage, you're going to need some good gloves or maybe a pair of tongs specially designed to take all these lids off and deal with all this stuff. But I find the gloves are enough as long as you don't hold on to that barrel for too long. So the first thing we need to do is pull all of those supports out of the bottom. Then we're going to take the chimney and the lid off, and we're going to wiggle that inner barrel down into the sand bed and make sure that it is good and sealed up on the bottom so there's no air coming up through there. If this gets too much air, you're just going to burn up all your charcoal. Now this is cooked down quite a bit, but that's not a bad batch of charcoal, it looks like. Put a lid on the inside. Then I put the outer lid back over there, just to seal it up as well as I can. Now certainly the more airtight you can make this, the better off you are. This is not a perfectly airtight system. I don't have an original lid for that inner barrel. If I did, that would be a big improvement on the project. But this does seem to work. I don't lose too much volume at this point. Hope you can see me. The smoke's blowing right into the camera, but it's not blowing in my face, so I'm okay with that. Now this has to sit until that is completely cool, or when you give it air, it's going to start burning your charcoal again. So it's got to be completely cooled off. Overnight is ideal, but this only took about 3 hours total this morning between cutting wood, doing the burn, and getting to this point. So probably before dinner time tonight, I'll be able to open this up and we'll see what we ended up with. Okay, it's late afternoon, about 6 hours later. Let's see what we ended up with. That looks pretty good to me. Now this still feels a little bit hot. It's hard to tell if that's just residual heat or if it's still burning a little bit in there. Overnight is usually better, so I'm going to get this sorted through and into another barrel with an airtight lid, and that way it guarantees that it's not going to keep burning. And by sorting, I mean getting rid of all the ash and any other junk that might be in there. And to do that, I've got this piece of expanded mesh set up so I can dump this barrel on here and then push it into this 55-gallon drum, and it has a nice airtight lid to go on it. So it'll be just fine for storing this. For that matter, you could just take this and dump it in the drum, burn another barrel, dump it in the drum, keep it sealed, and once it's cold, then you could go through and sift out all the ash. But I think that's a little harder work, even though you'll get more charcoal done for a given amount of time. Just depends on what you prefer to do. And some of this is not completely done. This piece is charred on the outside, but the inside is not. So that is not going to be something I keep as charcoal, but I'll put it in the barrel for the next one. Same thing will be true with this. So the bigger stuff didn't char very well, but the smaller stuff is fine. Now this ends up with a lot of really small stuff that will not be good forge fuel, but I'll go ahead and keep it anyways because it will help to some extent. It just blows out of the fire pot really easily. Personally, I prefer stuff about this size. That stays in the fire pot and is really a pretty good fuel. So that's really a quick look at making charcoal. There are lots of other ways to do this. This double barrel method is just a nice simple introduction to charcoal making. If I get really serious about it and I want to make enough charcoal to burn all year long, I'm going to need a much bigger system. And maybe at some point I'll talk about that, but I think that can be a different video. Because right now it would all be theoretical. I don't actually have a firm plan on what I want to do for a bigger charcoal setup. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, but stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next video.